The Creature in the Lake, a psychological horror in 6 parts. Part 1. The Return to Silver Pine Lake. The road to Silver Pine was emptier than David remembered. Pines arched over the cracked asphalt like silent watchers, the shadows crawling across the hood of his truck. The radio had stopped working an hour ago, and even his phone showed no service. He told himself it didn't matter. He wasn't here to talk to anyone. It had been 17 years since the accident, since the night his younger brother drowned in the lake. The police called it a tragic misadventure. David called it lie. He'd been there. He'd seen something in that water. Something that pulled. Now at 41, with a divorce behind him and insomnia eating at what was left of his sanity, he'd come back. To face it. To see if he'd imagined it all. When he reached the cabin, their old summer place, the air smelled the same. Pine, smoke, and that faint metallic tang of the lake. The water was still, black as oil. He unpacked slowly, trying not to look at the shoreline, but his eyes kept drifting there. At dusk, he poured a drink and stood on the porch. The last of the sun was bleeding through the trees when he heard it, a low sound, somewhere between a moan and a hum, drifting over the water. At first he thought it was the wind. Then it came again, longer, deeper, almost human. David set his glass down. "Hello?" Silence. Then a ripple across the surface. A single bubble broke through the black water. Then another. And another. He stepped closer to the edge of the dock, squinting. The lake was still again. But for a moment, just beneath the reflection of the moon, he thought he saw it. A face. Pale. Motionless. Watching him. Then it sank. David didn't sleep. He lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling as the sounds of the forest pressed in, the ticking of the old clock, the whisper of wind through pine, the soft creak of the cabin shifting with the cold. And underneath it all, that faint hum again. It came from the lake, low, rhythmic, almost like breathing. At 3:12 a.m., he finally got up. The night outside was heavy, moonlight diffused through a thin mist that clung to the water. He walked to the edge of the dock, flashlight trembling in his hand. "Hello?" he called out again, his voice small against the vast stillness. The beam of light danced over the surface, ripples shimmered outward, but nothing moved. Then, just beneath the light, something flashed. Not a fish. Eyes. 2 pale orbs reflecting the beam back at him from beneath the surface, too far apart to be human. The hum grew louder, vibrating in his chest like the bass of a faraway engine. He stumbled back, his heart pounding, as bubbles broke the water's skin. Then it stopped. Silence again. He stood there for what felt like hours before forcing himself inside. By morning, the lake looked innocent. Blue-gray, calm, glittering under the rising sun. He brewed coffee, convincing himself it was just exhaustion, stress, anything but what he thought he saw. Then came the knock. 3 soft taps on the cabin door. David froze. He opened it slowly, expecting maybe a ranger or a lost hiker, but it was a woman, mid-30s, dark hair pulled into a messy bun, flannel shirt and hiking boots. "You must be David Hale. I'm Dr. Lena Moore. I'm with the Environmental Research Group at the university. We monitor Silver Pine's ecosystem. David nodded warily. I didn't know anyone still came out here. Her eyes flicked toward the lake. Most don't, but lately there've been reports, strange noises, wildlife disappearing. He hesitated. You've heard it too? She met his gaze for a long moment before answering. Not heard, recorded. From her bag, she pulled a small device, an audio recorder. She pressed play. The sound that filled the cabin was unmistakable. That same low hum, distant, resonant, and layered with something else. Something like a voice beneath the water.
The recording looped again, filling the cabin with that impossible sound. Part wind, part whisper, part plea. David felt it crawl under his skin. "Where did you capture this?" he asked. "Here," Lena said. "Last week, by the North Dock. The equipment picked up vibrations from under the lake bed, frequencies below the human hearing range." She hesitated. "But when we enhanced it, we found something else. Words." David frowned. "Words?" She pressed another button. The hum deepened, slowed, and in the middle of the static came a faint phrase, stretched and hollow. "David." He froze. Lena glanced up. That name, we thought maybe it was a coincidence. But he knew that voice, even distorted, distant. It was his brother's. He turned toward the lake. It shimmered through the window, calm and endless. "That can't be possible," he muttered. "He's been dead 17 years. Lena lowered her voice. "Sometimes sound doesn't die the way we think. It can linger, trapped in the layers of the lake, like echoes in stone." That night, David couldn't stay inside. He grabbed a lantern and walked to the dock again, the boards groaning under his boots. The fog had thickened, swallowing the tree line. "Eli," he called out, "if that's you, say something." The lake breathed back a single ripple, then another. And then his own voice echoed from the fog. "David, help me." He stumbled backward, nearly slipping. The lantern flickered, its light carving pale streaks across the black water. There was movement just beneath the surface, a pale shape rising, stretching until it was almost touching the air. Then the light went out. Silence. When he finally made it back inside, drenched and shaking, Lena was waiting by the window. She had been watching. "I heard it too," she whispered. "It's not just your brother. Whatever's down there, it's calling anyone who listens." By morning, the fog hadn't lifted. It hung over the lake like a living thing, heavy, watchful, suffocating. David sat at the table, staring into his untouched coffee. The image of those pale eyes beneath the water replayed in his mind. He didn't tell Lena everything. Not about what the voice had said. Not about the way it sounded alive. Lena unpacked a case of equipment, hydrophones, motion sensors, notebooks filled with data. "We'll run a few recordings," she said. "If something's under there, we'll catch it." "Something is under there," David muttered. "I saw it." She gave him a measured look. "You saw something. The lake's full of methane pockets and optical distortions. You've been under stress." But she stopped mid-sentence when the monitor crackled. A deep pulse, like a heartbeat, rolled through the cabin speakers. Then another. And another. The hydrophone was picking up movement, large, deliberate, beneath the lake. Lena's face went pale. "That's not geological," she whispered. Outside, the fog began to move. Not drift, move. It swirled in thick columns that seemed to twist toward the shore, like fingers stretching across the surface. David stepped closer to the window. The water was churning, slow and heavy. Something was rising. Then, just as suddenly, it stopped. The monitor went dead. The fog froze. And for a heartbeat, there was silence. The kind that feels too quiet. Lena turned to David, her voice trembling. "Do you know what they called this place before Silverpine?" He shook his head. "Wraith Lake. In the early 1900s, settlers claimed it could keep the dead alive. The bodies of drowned miners would never float up. They'd just disappear." David looked at her, his throat dry. Disappear where? Lena's eyes drifted toward the water. No one ever found out, but the locals said, "The lake remembers what it takes." Outside, the mist thickened again, and from deep beneath the surface, faint but unmistakable, came the sound of screaming.
That night, David couldn't sleep. The fog pressed against the windows like a living wall, and the lake pulsed with faint ripples, even though there was no wind. Lena had gone silent after the last recording. She sat by the monitor, headphones on, staring into nothing. "Lena," David said quietly. She didn't answer. When he touched her shoulder, she flinched. "Listen," she whispered. She handed him the headphones. Static. Then a voice. Faint, distorted, but human. "David!" He froze. That was his name. Then again, clearer this time, the same voice. "David, it's cold down here." He ripped the headphones off. "Who is that?" Lena's face was pale. It came from the deepest part of the lake, over 200 feet down. He shook his head. "That's impossible." But he remembered the dream, the whisper, the thing calling to him from the dark. "David," Lena said softly, "what did you see in the water?" He hesitated, then told her everything. The reflection that wasn't his, the pale eyes, the voice in his head. When he finished, Lena looked terrified. "David, I think it's trying to replace you." Before he could respond, something slammed against the cabin wall. Once. Twice. Then silence. David grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside. The fog was thicker than ever. So dense it muted sound. He could barely see the lake, but he heard breathing. Not human. Deep, wet, uneven, like lungs full of water. The flashlight flickered. For a second the beam hit the shoreline. Something stood there. A figure, tall and bent, skin slick and gray like drowned flesh. Its eyes glowed faintly white. It looked almost human. Almost. "David!" it whispered, the sound echoing from everywhere at once. He stumbled back toward the cabin, heart pounding, but when he turned, the door was open. Lena was standing in the doorway, staring past him toward the lake. "Lena!" he shouted. She didn't move. Her lips trembled. "It's not calling you anymore," she said quietly. "It's calling me." And before he could stop her, she stepped into the fog. David ran after her, his flashlight cutting through the fog like a weak pulse of hope. "Lena!" His voice disappeared into the mist. He could barely see the waterline now, just movement, faint ripples where she'd gone.
Then he saw it. Her scarf floating near the rocks. He grabbed it, still warm. "Lena, please." Then something cold touched his wrist. He looked down and saw a hand rise from the water. Pale, slim, familiar. For a split second, he thought it was Lena's. Then another hand emerged beside it, and another, and another. Dozens of them, reaching upward, fingers twitching, dragging ripples into the black surface. The air grew thick with whispers, all the same voice. "Stay with us. Don't leave. It's peaceful here." David stumbled back, trembling. No, I'm not." But then he saw Lena, standing waist-deep in the water, her hair plastered to her face, her eyes open wide and empty. "Lena!" he cried, stepping forward. She smiled, soft and wrong. "It doesn't hurt anymore," she whispered. Behind her, something vast moved under the surface. The water bulged, then sank, as if breathing. "Lena, get out!" She only shook her head. "It's not the lake, David. It's us. We made it this way." "What are you talking about?" "The voices, they're everyone who was forgotten here." She took a step closer, the water climbing to her shoulders. "When the town dammed the river, the valley drowned, and so did the people." Her expression softened. "The lake remembers." The surface broke. A shape rose behind her, huge, faceless, made of water and shadow. It reached out, and Lena was gone, swallowed in silence. David screamed her name, rushing forward, but the edge gave way beneath him. The ground collapsed, and the lake swallowed him whole. Cold, endless, dark. And in the black water, he saw faces. Dozens of them. Some he knew, some long dead. And among them, Lena, reaching toward him. "Don't fight it. You'll see." When the surface finally stilled, the fog rolled back. The lake was quiet again. By morning, the cabin was empty. Only David's recorder sat by the window, still running, capturing faint whispers that rose and fell with the wind. If you listened closely enough, you could hear them say, "We all come back to the lake."